All right, so now we're going to get into more specifics of exactly what to think and what to do. All right, so we have kind of the underpinnings, the theory behind everything, and now we're going to bring it all together. So let's talk inner game. Basics of inner game. Primary rule, primary idea of inner game, before anything else, is 3 simple words: you are enough. Okay? You're enough. And again, like I talked about on the social conditioning page a second ago, even if you're not perfect, if you can't change it, you're better off assuming you're enough. Okay? There's 2 types of guys that get success with girls, basically. One type of guy is the guy who knows all the techniques in the world, knows the right response to everything, and just kind of techniques his way through it. That guy can get pretty good results. He usually doesn't get the great, like, tip-top results, but he can get pretty good results because he just, like, has an answer. He knows what he's doing. Right? Like, if one of you guys were to somebody throw a shit test at me right now, anything.
Nice belly. Man, those boots are...
Thanks, I work hard on it. I appreciate that. Huh?
Those boots are just ugly.
You think? Cool. Well, cool opinion, bro. Right? Like, just not being reactive, not caring, whatever. Like, knowing an answer for a shit test. Okay? That'll get you a long way. But it's not everything. It's not everything because it lacks soul. Right? Again, here's actually a good concept before we get to this. What is pickup? What is pickup and what are pickup techniques? It's this. And mind you, I'm making this definition up on the spot a little bit, but pickup essentially is this. It's conveying we'll call it ideal man qualities. Actively and efficiently. And then from there, using that to connect, to form a connection. So that's the second stage. So first part is conveying those attractive qualities in an efficient way and an active way. Like not just sitting against the wall being an alpha male from far away. You have to actually be in the girl's face and doing it, right? Letting her see those honest signals, conveying you're that guy, and then using the leverage you have from that to actually form a real, genuine connection and make a good relationship. Okay, that's how I look at pickup. Okay? So that's essentially what you're doing here. So when we look at the you are enough idea, the guy who knows the technique, he's conveying these qualities, but he's conveying a fake of those qualities. So it's like he's smattering over the behaviors to cover up something underneath that's not there, right? Better is to actually be that person. Instead of just conveying, what if you were being? Right? That's the ideal. That's what we'd actually like to get to, and that's what we like to create in life. Like, for example, I would bet, I don't know this for sure, but Cristiano Ronaldo probably has never studied formal pickup. I don't know that for a fact. Could be that he has. Don't know. But I would assume he probably hasn't. I assume he probably started getting laid at like 12 from groupies, and it's been pretty good for him ever since, right? However, he may not know pickup theory and how to actively convey these things. However, I guarantee you he probably acts a lot this way, okay? The guy I met who was the absolute best at game I've ever seen in my entire life had not studied formal pickup at the time that I met him. Okay, I met him, he actually came on a boot camp, interestingly enough. He had the best game I've ever seen, but he didn't know how to do an approach. Because basically he was that same scenario as like a Cristiano Ronaldo type. He was a soccer player in Europe. He had, since the age of 13, every time he left the field, he had a row of groupies waiting to fuck him and his teammates. And he just viewed girls as fun, silly, interesting things, but he had no ego attached to them, no entitlement issues whatsoever. And quick story, basically his entire thing is he didn't know how to do a cold approach because he didn't know what to say. He's like, I don't know what to say to him because he'd always just been approached. Right? He'd been approached so many times he didn't know how to approach. So we taught him to walk over to a girl and say, hi, my name is his name. That was the extent of his teaching on boot camp. That's all we needed to teach him. From there, he was good. And his mind was blown. He's like, oh my God, you can do that? And then he proceeded the first night of boot camp to take 2 girls home with one of the instructors and have the two girls trying to ditch the instructor and have a threesome with him all night. Following night, different instructor, same story. Okay? This guy was that good. He was like insane. He went, a couple weeks later, he went on like a vacation to like the Greek islands, which is kind of an orgy anyway. But in like, I think he slept with like 15 girls in 9 days or something like that, and just. So yeah, he did all right. But his issue, he didn't know a lot of like, do this push-pull, have this routine, convey that thing. But for whatever reason, because of how he grew up, what his experience was, he had learned a lot of the right things. And so he wasn't actively conveying these things, he was just being them, right? And that's actually the better way to be. The better way to be is to actually be it. And that brings us to the second type of guy who gets results. So again, the first type of guy is the guy who has all the pickup technique. The second type of guy who can get results is what I like to call the it's always on guy. The it's always on guy, basically, he just assumes that every girl likes him. You may have heard this phrase, assume attraction. Not always good advice, but often good advice. Okay, assume attraction. Because if you go in and you assume she likes you, and you're right, you're gonna be acting in the right way. If you go in and assume attraction and you're wrong, well, you know, she wasn't attracted to you anyway, you haven't lost much. Also, if you go in and assume attraction and you're wrong, the very fact that you're assuming she's attracted, it says you believe you are that alpha guy, that 1%, she might just be convinced. It might just win her over, all right? So assuming attraction is certainly better than the alternative. What do a lot of guys do? They do this. Assume rejection, right? A lot of guys go in assuming they're going to get rejected, and what happens? They get rejected almost every single time, right? So between these two, I'd rather be this and wrong than this and right any day of the week, okay? So that's the other type of guy that gets results, is the guy that is the it's always on guy. So what I encourage you to do is be both. I encourage you to be the it's always on guy, go in assuming attraction, but also don't be clueless. Right? Because there's also the it's always on guy that's clueless. He just like escalates all the time and is really pushy and doesn't calibrate to the girl, doesn't understand where he's at, doesn't know what she's feeling, that kind of stuff. And that doesn't really get you very good results either. Okay, so you want to start out with assume attraction as your basis, and then you want to have the pickup technique as a fallback. And that's where you can do both of these. Right? It's always on, it's always assume attraction is kind of like being that guy a bit. And then knowing the pickup technique and knowing how to adjust is very much conveying that guy. So that's what we want to be doing with that, okay? But the core is you are enough. Second core idea, besides you are enough. And this kind of goes along with you are enough, but it's a little different. You are not an imposition, a burden, or an interruption. Okay? A lot of guys, they see a group of girls talking like, I don't want to interrupt them. I don't want to bother them. They seem like they're in such a good conversation. No. If Leonardo DiCaprio walked over and interrupted their conversation, you think the girls would be like, fuck off, Leo. We're talking about Mary's job right now. Fuck off. No, absolutely not, right? The reason guys think that is because they don't believe they are enough. They don't understand that they are offering value, all right? So you need to understand that. We'll talk in a second about exactly what offering value is, and that's important as well. But here's another key phrase. This is pickup industry mantra circa 1999 that's kind of fallen by the wayside. Repeat this, everybody, like after me. It's actually important. I make no apologies for my desires as a man. Everybody say that. I make no apologies for my desires as a man. Good. I make no apologies for my desires as a man. It's okay to have a penis. It's okay to look at a girl and be attracted to her. It's okay to tell her that. It's totally okay. I know we grew up in like, or at least I did, in elementary school, middle school, even high school, where, if you have a crush on someone, it's like big gossip and it's like, ooh, Todd likes so-and-so, right? Whatever, right? Doesn't matter, right? You are supposed to, as a man, like girls. If you didn't, it would be fucking weird, right? That's another social conditioning thing, right? Social shaming. All right, so don't fall into that. I make no apologies for my desires as a man. That's absolutely critical, all right? So that's what we have so far. I am enough. I am not an imposition or a burden. And I make no apologies for my desires as a man. That should be your general frame, okay? Now, there's a lot of nuance within that, but that's your general frame. Now, I spoke a minute ago about offering value, what is offering value? What is value? Right? Well, there are a lot of different types of value. Right? And a lot of people, a lot of guys, they think value is what? Money and like, I don't know how to draw good looks. Like I'll draw like a fucking like chiseled male physique. I don't know. And like big biceps. That's a like terrible picture. But like money and good looks, sure. That's what people think, oh, if I'm not rich and good looking, I have no value, right? That's actually a very minimal part of value, right? Again, good looking is a bit of a genetic on a signal, but again, remember, appearance is less important for women. Not that important for women, right? It's important for us as men, right? Because we're just looking for good genetic vessels to get our kids into the next generation. They're actually looking for ongoing support, survival capabilities, ingenuity, intellect, all those kind of things. So looks matter, but not that much. Money, yeah, matters a little bit as a symbol, but that didn't even exist in evolution, right? So it exists a little bit as a symbol, but it's not really the biggest thing, right? What actually does provide value, a lot of it is, at least in modern society, it is your values, okay? And remember this, value comes from values. And actually, here's another phrase of this, is value exists within a frame. Hang on. So both of these matter. Okay, so if you are in a nightclub, and the frame of the nightclub is that girls drink free, don't touch the girls, or if they complain, you get thrown out, and guys have to pay $100 cover, and these kind of things, right? If you go up to a girl and you're bought into that frame, are you gonna have let's put it this way. There's two people in this nightclub. One is a billionaire, one is a hot girl. In that nightclub frame, who has more value, the billionaire or the hot girl? The hot girl. Now in life, honestly, who has more value, billionaire or hot girl? Billionaire, right? But why is that? It's because within that context, they're in the frame of the nightclub. So if you are living within that frame, it's very hard to have value, right? And most people are living through what frame? The societally conditioned frame, which is woman on a pedestal, man a little bit lower. And from that frame, it's very, very hard to have value. So understand value exists within a frame. So if, for example, let's take an example in the room. Let's do you. What is something that you value? Anything in life. What's something that you care about or you value or think is important in life?
For me?
For you, yeah.
What do I value? I value probably nice vacations.
Okay. So like vacations, you like the experience? Do you like
going to the Caribbean or Mexico or Cancun?
Cool. So travel, vacation. What do you like about travel and vacation specifically?
I like being out on the beach, whether it be on a boat.
Okay. So that's the experience.
Yeah.
What about that experience do you like though? What does it do for you emotionally, or what does it do for you intellectually, or what's the experience of that to you?
It gives me a lot of good memories and good times, I think.
Cool. Good experience.
Brings up my mood.
Memories. Cool. Cool. All right. So that's a value, right? I like good experiences, have good memories, bring my mood up, that kind of stuff. Okay. So if he's in the frame that what's important in life, excuse me, is money and prestige, and he talks about having a good experience and bringing up his mood, that's not very relevant in that frame. But if he talks within the frame of good experiences, having good memories, being in a good mood is important, and he talks about having a great vacation, now all of a sudden within that context, what he's saying is of high value. Okay? So if you're able to dictate a frame, dictate a way of looking at the interaction where what you view as value is the accepted frame of value, then the things you talk about will have value. If you're in a frame of the interaction, if you're looking at the interaction through a lens that values other characteristics besides what you find valuable, you're inherently going to be talking in a low value way. Does that make sense? Right? We'll do another example. How about you? What is something you value?
Loyalty?
You value loyalty? Cool. Good. Cool. So loyalty. You value loyalty. What else?
This will sound weird, but Honor.
Loyalty and honor, cool.
You guys will take the high route, don't, or petty.
Awesome, cool. All right, so if you were, if you were in you're put in a room in a white collar prison, and everybody is discussing their little scams and crimes and stuff like that, and you start talking about virtue and honor, within the frame that they're thinking in, would your ideas of loyalty and honor have a lot of value?
Not at all.
Not a lot of value, not in that frame, because that's the established frame is different, right? So if you're accepting their frame, these things wouldn't have a lot of value. However, if you have dictated a frame, if you've created like they're viewing you as an authority and you're talking on these subjects and you're talking passionately and they buy into it, then they might begin to have honor. They might begin to have value, right? Or for example, in the context of maybe like a military context, loyalty and honor are very highly valued there. So if you were talking to people that were very indoctrinated to that, and you were speaking on this, they might very much buy into it and find your words very, very valuable. Okay? So when you go into a situation, there's the inherent frame, and if you're contrary to the inherent frame, you may have trouble getting value. And then there's also the frame that you choose or accept, right? So the key here is put yourself in situations where you're gonna have a good frame to begin with, but even more so, don't accept frames that aren't helpful to you. Don't accept situations where the things you value aren't what is valuable in the interaction. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the idea, yeah.
Can you still be successful, say, playing in someone else's frame, or would you suggest like kind of?
It's very hard. It's very hard. What usually happens, because we'll talk about like male-female, right? So there's the typical societal frame that has the woman of higher value than the man, right? And if you want to go in and be successful as a man in that frame, typically you're going to have to get it on a level playing field. You're going to have to assert your frame, which is that I have value, the things I'm saying are important, we're equals, or even like maybe I'm even superior, right? So what's going to happen is you're going to go in and challenge that frame, right? And when you challenge someone's frame, usually they give some form of resistance. So they'll give you shit tests, or they'll argue with you, or they'll be a little difficult with you, right? And if your frame, your belief system ends up being stronger than theirs, usually your frame will win. If your frame is weaker than theirs, usually your frame will lose, right? So, but if you're going into a situation where the frame isn't favorable to you, typically in order to be wildly successful, you can have some success from a different frame, but to be very, very successful, you're gonna need to create a favorable frame. And in order for that to happen, there's gonna be some sort of frame battle. Or there's gonna be some kind of back and forth. And that's where a lot of the snarkiness and shit tests and flirtation that occurs early on within a male-female dynamic, that's where it comes from, is that you're going in with this different frame, this frame of, I have value, you're lucky that I'm talking to you, whatever it is, or I just want to meet you and we could have a great time together. And she's like, well, no, I'm this high value girl and I don't need this, right? She's gonna test that frame. Stronger frame wins. Yeah.
My friend actually sent me this question. So is your goal simply to be your best self, or is it to be as good as those that are better than you? Because sometimes the bar is far beyond what you think your best self is. And you give a metaphor of like, what if you're, for example, you're exercising, and you're trying to reach a certain weight, but everyone around you is like 100 times buffer than you and all that.
Well, kind of off topic, but essentially you want to have the best realistic goal you can, I suppose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if my goal was to play center in the NBA, I'm probably destined to be disappointed.
Right.
Just sorry, right? I would be a defensive liability no matter how good I got within my physical talents.
Well, he was trying
Right.
to relate it to the whole value existing frame. So should you just embrace your own inner value, or try to conform to the other values surrounded by you?
That's an interesting question. So now the answer I would give to that is a little bit of both.
Okay.
And it kind of depends. So I'll give you the guy that I know, or one of the guys I know with like what I call the thickest frame, or like one of the strongest frames within his realm that I've ever seen, is actually my father. Here's a guy who, he believes what he believes. He's absolutely like very strong about it. One of his beliefs is that like being cool is uncool. Okay, that's like his belief. He has this whole like, I grew up with this idea of like, some things are for show and some things are for go. And there's this like, oh, that's just for show, right? It's not for like performance. It's not for any like inherent intrinsic value. It's just showy, or it's just that bullshit, like trying to be cool shit, right? And so interestingly enough, I didn't know this when my parents were married, but once they got divorced, he actually like does really well with girls, right? He actually is a bit, and it's funny because growing up I never listened to his advice with girls, so I'm like, oh, my dad doesn't know. I probably should have listened. But the reason he does really well, or a big part of why he does really well, is he goes in with this very strong frame, and he goes in and he's like a teacher of that frame. He imparts that frame to the girls. And girls like buy into it. So they buy into his world because he believes it so strongly. However, so that's really good. And that's actually part of why he's so good. However, I would argue that he hurts himself considerably by being so far outside of the frame of what most hot girls believe, right? He makes the inherent frame battle between him and a hot girl much worse than he necessarily should, okay? So what he ends up getting actually is he ends up getting a lot of girls that are like cute but aren't fully bought into like being super hot, or aren't fully bought into like they may be like they're smart and interesting and good looking, but they're not like turbo hot. They don't go to the gym all the time. They don't whatever, right? And if that's what he wants, by all means, and to a certain extent it is what he wants. But I also know that he wishes like he was with more attractive girls a bit. And so I think that if he were to soften and cater a little bit, that would work. See if I can kind of draw this. It's like if this is your frame here and this is her frame over here, that's a really, really big distance. That's a big, it's a lot of work to draw her all the way over there. However, if her frame was here and your frame was plausibly here and you draw her into your frame, then once she's in your frame, you have a lot more leverage to bring, like, I guess, the two of you together over there. Does that make sense? It's kind of like, have you ever noticed how a girl can give you like a lot of shit and resistance and be very snarky, and then you sleep with her and all of a sudden she's like totally in love with you, and then she'll like do anything for you? Well, if you want to get a girl over here, is it easier to like make her have to come all the way over here before sleeping with you? Or is it easier to get her like part way, have her sleep with you, and then bring her the rest of the way once she's bought in? Right? So I would argue that there is expediency value, there is efficiency value to catering a little bit at times with the end goal of not dropping your frame in the long run.
And I think that would translate to like tomorrow, but I'm saying like how would you do about leeching her, like the value from her and her group of friends?
You need to lead.
Gotcha.
You need to lead. So for example, let's say that, and this is just hypothetical, not putting particular values as better or worse or whatever, but say that a girl were highly, highly, highly religious. And let's say I wanted like a frame of like highly scientific, right? If I went in and my sale was, you have to forget everything you've known in your entire life and fuck all that, and everyone you know is wrong, and that's a pretty hard sell. That's a pretty hard sell. However, if my frame was, oh, that's really interesting. Here, check out, like I saw this interesting thing in science. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that kind of fascinating? Wouldn't it be cool to learn more about it? And I kind of get her bought in and intrigued with that and develop a good connection. And then over time, as I get to know her, I just like feed her a little bit more of that and let her go on her own path.
Slowly.
Yeah, right? It's an easier way to make the same sale, right? If that sale is even worth making, which it may or may not be.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So like having a strong frame is kind of like having a strong viewpoint, you know? Like, and you know, I'm somebody who like is a Mr. Debater with a very strong viewpoint. I've been that guy online that like turned off all the other girls because there you meet those guys that like they can't drop their arguments. They can't. I kind of get it's not dropping your frame, but being flexible. And then it's like me trying to debate the hell out of a girl that believes in GMOs. And I'm like, no, science, you don't understand. And then they're like, you're annoying, you know, like go away. But you, instead of like debating them to death and trying to drill it into them, being flexible, and then maybe eventually like feeding her into her instead of being.
So let me answer what I think you're asking.
Sorry.
So it's okay. So there is this bringing someone into your frame, which is kind of, it's necessary to a certain extent to get them in a frame that's at least favorable to you. Now, maybe by the way, maybe that some girls are already in a favorable frame too, if you already believe the same things. So that's necessary, but there's where you need to get them and then the method, right? The method of direct debate is almost never gonna work, okay? If I go in and I'm like, the things you know about life are wrong, they immediately put up a wall, don't wanna hear it. Does that make sense? Or if when you're talking to a girl and showing her you have value, if you're like, I'm better than you, bitch, right? And you're just like that kind of stuff. there's a small segment of women that might work with, like they have a very weird sort of like self-esteem thing going on. But for most girls, it's not going to work. However, if you make the experience fun and flirtatious, then they're going to be much more amenable to it. Okay? So if you're getting in it, put it this way, if in order to be with you or in order to sleep with you, she has to lose in some way, that's not a fun experience for her. You want to set up a scenario where being with you is a win. And we're going to talk a ton about that tomorrow, about making yourself a win for the girl as opposed to making yourself a loss. But that's the thing, when you're directly debating frames, you're setting up a situation where even if you win, you still lose because she can't say yes without losing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
But not catering to her completely, that still creates respect somewhat, right?
It would. She might have respect for you and not date you or sleep with you.
Not attraction,
Yeah, because the interaction itself is so negative.
Okay.
So the secret is to get her there, but without creating a negative interaction, because a negative interaction is also toxic.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the,
Thank you.
One
Yeah,
thing
absolutely.
you brought up though.
Uh-huh.
So if you do have the same frame, she outclasses you in that frame.
Mhm.
Can you still lead? Say, I mean, you're really into working out, really into, and then she's already boom, way ahead. How could you work with that?
sure. Okay, so so I said this idea of your value comes from your values, right? And you have your own particular set of values, right? And so maybe you value, I mean, I don't know what you value, but I'm just gonna throw this out here. So say you're a healthy person or whatever. So you value like gym, diet, I don't know, performance. Yeah, okay, fine, I'll put beards up there, it doesn't even matter. I can put whatever I want, but beards, doesn't even matter what it is. So you value this stuff, right? And then she values gym, diet, she values like fashion. Fashion has an H, right? H-I-O-N, yeah, fashion. So she values this kind of stuff, right? So if you start leading, well, first of all, you guys can agree on these kind of things. And if you can like give her new ideas in there, you can lead towards the new ideas because maybe she knows a lot, but you know some things she doesn't, you just led within those areas. Also in these areas that are your frame, if you lead her and get her buying into it, you've led as well, okay? Because no two people are gonna have the exact same alignment of everything, right? So the idea is that you just take a leadership role and bring positive value into her life one way or another. Okay. And the other idea of your value comes from your values is this. Your value system, and not to say that it's this, but whatever your value system is, do you think it helps you in life?
Yes.
Yes. Do you think that most people's lives would be better if they had a similar value system or if they understood your value system a bit?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So when you talk to someone by sharing your values with them, are you making their life better? Yes, you are, right? Do you believe that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would believe it too. I think it's true, right? So that's the frame you have is, I have within this room somewhere between like maybe 20 and 40, 20 and 50 years of life experience, something like that. And these are the things I've learned. These are the things I value. These are the things that I can share and impart to make your world better. And I'm willing to do that for you, right? And so by doing that, by having that interaction with her, you have no choice but to be offering her value. It's absolutely necessary that it be valuable, right? It can't be otherwise. That make sense? So your value comes from your values. You look like you have a question.
Yeah. In terms of value, I oftentimes find myself in a situation where I might be talking to a girl who values wealth. A girl whose father might come from a very high place as far as money goes. And me myself, I don't come from that place. So when we talk about things that we value, she might come and I might pick her up, she might look at my car. It's a beat up old car. She's used to Mercedes and Ferraris and stuff like that. But if I try to show her the value of money doesn't matter, it's not gonna work. So how do I do that?
So again, if you directly oppose the value she's had her whole life, that's a tough sell. However, you can show her other things that do matter. So don't be like, this other thing doesn't matter, this other thing does matter. Also within specifically the money frame, a big part that does it is ambition and a plan and those kind of things tends to matter almost more than the tangible, right? So a lot of times you can get to like the meta frame. So here's another one, which is say that I'm 33, I've dated girls that are a lot younger than me, right? I've dated girls that are 18, 21, whatever. And some of those girls might have the idea in their head that they don't want to date an older guy, right? And that's the thought in their head, right? But there's two types of values. I call it means values and end values. Means value is the actual thing in the world that they think they don't want. The end value is why they don't want it or what effect it has on their life. So for example, if a girl is young and she doesn't want to date an older guy because she thinks like older guys are out of touch or out of shape or won't understand them, have not a similar life, right? And I get to know that about her, and I show her that I am fun, cool, in touch, have like similarities in life with her, then the age thing doesn't matter. Because even though I didn't hit the means value, which is the age, I hit the end value, which is the experience she's looking for. Does that make sense? So you can always do that kind of stuff too.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, absolutely, okay. All right, so now inner game, just to recap. You are enough, you're not an imposition or a burden, you make no apologies for desires of man, and your value comes from your values. So your goal is to express your values and live in a world where your values are the important ones. Live in a world where your values matter.